Welcome to Universal Theory, where the goal is to find a common language between the abstract and concrete. We are the unorthodox representation of physics and metaphysics. During the time that we have with you, we will discuss all that is potential and equally possible. I'm Jordan.
And I'm Trent.
And together, we are Universal Theory. We welcome you on this journey of scientific and metaphysical exploration, and we hope that any information that is conveyed or professed by either of us is of the utmost importance, value, and of practical use in your everyday lives.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Universal Theory. I'm your co-host, Trent. Joined with me, as always, Jordan. How you doing, man? Yeah, doing good? He's the strong and silent type over there. Yeah, it's great to be back. And as always, I swear we own more clothes than this, but it's the only clothes we own with our logo on it right now. So this is what you get. But yeah, so if you want one, the store will be up. So it'll be in the description down below. Go ahead and get you a hoodie or a t-shirt or whatever you'd like. A laptop sticker. But yeah, it'll be up there if you want to support us in that way. But I think the most important thing is to hit that thumbs up, subscribe, and share. Right? As we talked about before, it's much more beneficial to us if you share the content as opposed to supporting us with merch. Now, we're not saying don't go get the merch, because the merch is fly and our logo is dope. And we're going to do a video about how all the principles tie into our logo. So don't miss that. But the one you're here for today is Rhythm. Episode 6, man. It's coming along. Rhythm, yeah. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. So we're going to be dealing with equality and kind of how some of the other principles tie in. Obviously, all the other principles are going to tie into every principle, but on this one, it's very obvious. But before we get into that, shout out to Outlaw Revolutionary and Coffee Talk. Those are their handles, at least the beginning of them. There's some numbers there. I don't want to have to memorize those. But shout out to you two for being in the comment section, being soldiers down there, letting us know what you liked about the episodes and just kind of being supportive for us. That means more than you know. So we appreciate that. And that is what we want to see, right? We want to see that interaction. We want to see the community start to interacting with each other, interacting with us. And the more we can get down there in the comment section and the more we can share the content, the more that this community will become a reality. So thank you very much to both of you and everybody else who was down there. Our Patreon is up. I think we mentioned that in the last video, but just to mention it again, it's not the purpose while we're doing this. The Patreon will help fund things like animations and allow us to go do things that we otherwise would be limited to. Maybe even get a studio outside of my bedroom at some point. Hey. But this is where we're at now. So yeah, the Patreon will help in that. That's up. The link will be down below. And without any further ado, Rhythm. It's the rhythm of the night. Wow, wow. Sorry if that hurt your ears out there, because that was unexpected. Sometimes that kind of stuff happens. But, when you say the word rhythm, I feel like people think about music. That's the main thing that comes to anybody's mind when they hear that word. At least it does for me, especially that Gloria Stefan song or whoever sings that song. It just plays in my head when I say that word. So, but it applies to much more than music. But we can see by using music as a analogy as kind of what rhythm is, right? It's the ebb and flow. If music was just a constant note, right, that wouldn't be music, right? It takes that peaks and troughs, right, that up and down for life to exist and for music to exist. So we can use that as a key point in what rhythm is. So think of your favorite song and then think about how it might make you feel certain types of emotions. And it does that through this change, right? Through this up and down. And what a lot of people don't think about when they think about rhythm is karma. And some people might, but I feel like the main principle related to karma would be cause and effect. But it's, rhythm. Like I said, the swing to the right is the swing to the left. So you know that what you reap is what you sow. It is compensation. So we know that through the principles that there is compensation, whether it's from something that you recently done, like people will see somebody like flicking somebody off and turn around and then running into something, and it's like instant karma. But there's also karma that can last much longer, and it also ties into conservation of energy. So conservation of energy tells us that if I have a bowling ball screwed into the ceiling on a very long rope, and I pull it back up against my face and let it go, as long as I don't lean forward, I know there is no way, no matter how heavy, no matter how far back I am, that bowling ball is going to come, go away from me and then come back, and I know it's not going to hit my face because I trust in the conservation of energy. Energy would have to be created, right? Or I guess an outside force, if the ceiling tilted or something crazy, that would be instant karma. But I know, right, that thing coming back at me will not hit me as long as I am where I left, as long as I am where I was when I let go of the ball. So conservation of energy is a principle that to the academias out there, that is to the academics out there, that is something you can get behind, is conservation of energy. And that's something that we've talked about quite a bit. So, and then taking that same law and going back to the karma I was just talking about, we could see that karma could even theoretically exist in different lifetimes. We're going to talk about the data here. There is some studies out there that's trying to prove, reincarnation and these types of things, but they aren't as sound as we would like them to be. So, but that energy in theory would still be there, right? If you're a terrible person and you die, your energy doesn't get created or destroyed, only transferred. So that looming shadow is going to follow that energy wherever it gets transferred to.
Exactly. Yeah, and to look at it from two different perspectives, thinking about rhythm, we could think about, let's say we don't subscribe to some type of, in this case, it might be appear as mystical karma or some type of phantasmagoric karma or some elusive karma that's not tangible. So maybe karma is real, maybe it's not. We would like to think that it is, and like he said, we would need more data, but there is still karma in the guy, with the behavior of flipping off random people. That behavior is cyclical, and he has the environment has impressed itself on him and affected how he's reacted, and if in a negative or a positive way it impacts the genome, and then this creates a rhythm, and now he may be procreating and then passing on these genetic traits, and then this rhythm could continue on indefinitely. Like in a laboratory setting or in an environmental setting, I think it's like so many different descendants.
Yep. Oh yeah, generational curses is what they call them, or whatever.
So the sins of the father are projected onto the son and the daughter and the successors. So even in a biblical sense, they knew that rhythm and karma were connected.
Yep.
And they may have gone even further and said, let's apply this to a previous life or a succeeding life.
Yeah.
And we may not have the data to validate that yet, but we do understand that rhythm applies in the now. Yeah,
that's a great point. And when I say about being spiritually selfish, right, when your external actions are going to reflect internally all the way down to your genetic material and can affect your life and your descendants.
Exactly. And like he said, these rhythms can continue on for generations and generations. And I forget the exact number of generations that they've cataloged epigenomic characteristics. I know that they use the Jewish Holocaust as one of the examples.
Oh, yep.
And they have a wide range of other examples. We'll post a link down below so that you can see that there's research on this. Because once upon a time, epigenetics was kind of like, it was like spooky science.
Yeah, it was.
It was like, genes are fixed and they can't change and you are who you're born as. And it's like, you are. But you have an epigenome and these things can be altered in one way or another. And there's a rhythm to this. So if you get into the rhythm of certain behaviors, you can not just epigenetically, because this is more long-term down the road. It can happen in, depending on how powerful the event is, it could happen in days in theory, but months, years, etc. So, but you have neuroplasticity, which will come before that. And that happens in rhythms because the more you repeat something, the more likely it is to create the necessary biochemical reactions, the necessary internal chemistry, the electrochemical signaling to produce new synaptic connections, new neurons, or the pruning of neurons. And I think we talked about this before. So, and then you have even more, you have rhythms that will happen more quickly than neuroplasticity.
Habits, right?
Habits, exactly. And those habits affect biochemistry. They affect everything that you are in the moment. So you have rhythms of, you have infradian rhythms, which are longer than 24 hours. And then you have within an infradian rhythm, you have migrational patterns. You have a SAD, seasonal affective disorder, where people are affected and they might go through bouts of depression and happiness. Alternating. You have hibernation patterns, procreative patterns, or mating patterns. You have menstrual patterns, which this happens in a 28-day cycle. You have menopause, which happens in women after they have completed that process around 40 or 50 years of age. You have circadian rhythms, which deal with things that happen in a 24-hour span. You have body temperature, you have blood pressure, you have alertness, you have digestion, you have hormonal secretion, and then you have ultradian rhythms, which are things like heart rate, which changes in a shorter period of 24 hours. You have heartbeat, respiration, you have whether you're hungry or you're not, body movement, whether you're active or you're inactive, REM cycle, sleep, things of these nature. So the planet has rhythms. Spinning on its axis, it's 465 miles per second. Then it goes around the sun at 107,000 miles per hour. And then the solar system is traveling through the galaxy at like 230 kilometers per second. And then it takes 225 to 250 million years to make one cycle. And then we're spinning inside of the zodiac in 1 degree in space every 72 years and 2,160 years per constellation, and then a 25,920 year cycle, approximately 26,000 years. So all of these things are based off of rhythm, whether it be as above or so below, whether it's manifesting from the wave to the particle, that's a rhythm.
Yep. Yeah. And a superposition, as it presents itself, as it manifests itself, we need time in order to see rhythm. But from a more absolute sense, it's all unfolding at once. There will be a macro rhythm, right? And all the rhythms exist within this absolute sense, so it can't escape the principle. But everything that we're talking about and all those, nice facts you were just spitting out like a calculator or a computer over there, and I can't even remember the day I was born. That all had to deal with time, right? It's a time thing, and that's one of those things that we can't get away from, and that's why time is, tangible. Time is something that relative to existence, because it's the unfoldment of the principles. You wouldn't see the rhythm unless it had time to unfold. So there's something profound about how the pendulum swinging to the right, to the left is a very simple thing, but then you start to get into all these other changes that the macro undergoes, and then all these changes that these the micro undergoes, and we start to see that it's an unfoldment, right? It's an unfoldment of the superposition down to the particles.
Yes. And that's a great point. And to elaborate on what he was saying about time, because I know there's some people out there right now and they're like,
sure,
time is not real.
Yeah.
And it's like, time is real, but our measurement of it is arbitrary.
Right.
And it's also like saying the difference between a human and an ape is also arbitrary, because we're both animals and we are technically primates, but we're making distinctions for a reason. Mm-hmm. We're making these categories for a reason. So people who don't like categories, well, don't stand in a line. Just cut the line next time you're in the grocery store. And hopefully there's like a 350-pound wrestler in front of you. And we'll see why there's categories. So a wide range of reasons why we need them to organize things. Mm-hmm. Because we have to circumscribe things and put it in boxes before we can open the box and let it out and understand it. So, it's paradoxical. Circumscribe something to expand your perspective of it. But back to time. Time is real because, like he said, it's the rhythm. It's the vibratory oscillation between two poles. Mm-hmm. So whether we're measuring it or not, it exists because the principles exist. Yep. Do you hear me, people? It exists because the principles exist. So if some top-notch physicist or some backyard quack is saying, hey, time doesn't exist. Time does exist, and like he said, time is tangible. I can touch, taste, smell, hear, sense time. Yeah. I can do this because time is comprised of principle, and without principle, we wouldn't have time. That's why in a superposition, there would be no time, right? Because time would be absolute. Yeah. But in the relative sense, time is something that we can measure, and we can set up all type of arbitrary means of measuring it, which can allow us to live our lives. Clocks are arbitrary, but they still allow us to comprehend circadian rhythms. Back to that rhythm. What time of day is it? Is it noon? Is it morning? Is it afternoon? Is it evening? How much sunlight have I gotten?
Yeah, and what's kind of cool is seeing the cascading effect. What's happening on the macro, right? Like you were just talking about our circadian rhythm, and that's based upon where we are relative to the sun, right? So that macro rhythm helps determine the micro rhythm, and then our rhythms are going to determine what were they, the less than 24-hour ones, the ultradian rhythms, right? So you can see it cascading its way down, just like when we were talking about with the individual who is doing something, whether positive or negative, that energy, that action, you can see it reverberate all the way down, right? Mm-hmm. down to your genetic material. So we like to think that what we do is what we want to do, right? But there are these things outside of our control that are actually dictating what we do and when we do it. We have, I think another circadian rhythm is like the dopamine release. And so it's important to go out to the sun. As soon as you wake up, go out and get some sunshine. That's the first thing I do. It doesn't matter how cold it is. I go outside and I stand out there for a couple of minutes. And I sometimes will look directly at the sun like an idiot. Like, I'll get more sun this way. Ow, it hurts. But I know that my body has to dump this dopamine. And that's another rhythm, right? I know my body needs to get rid of that. So I'd rather choose when it when it releases it into my system. Yep. So I'm choosing for it to do it first thing in the morning. When it's time for me to get ready to go to bed, I try to stay away from bright lights and stay away from artificial light as much as possible and start to relax. So that way my body can start to transmute the serotonin into melatonin. Thank you for catching me on that. Yeah. So these are the types of things that as the more that you understand about your own body, the more that you can start to see, these rhythms happen no matter what in less than 24 hours. So let me take advantage of that. These rhythms happen no matter what in about 24 hours. So let me take advantage of that, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep, exactly. And like he was saying, you have a bit of control. So when I say a bit of control, well, if you had supreme control, then if you had supreme control, I'm not even going to get into the exact reason why I'm saying this,
Sure.
but if you had supreme control, then that might take away the control that someone else has. So everyone has to have shared control. If we all have shared control or relative control, then everyone could have some control.
Yep.
But if one person has supreme control, then everyone else has to have less than supreme control.
Exactly.
So no one technically can have supreme control because the only thing that is in control is the superposition.
Yeah, and that's where rhythm comes from, is those micro controls underneath that supreme control, right?
Exactly.
And that's why it's swinging like this, because there's one thing that's absolute that it's happening inside of that has the supreme control, and then there's the things inside that are relative that are yanking it back and forth, creating this rhythm.
Exactly. And like he was saying, you can alter when these things happen and how these things happen. So, going back to going outside, another one of the things that we naturally produce in our body is cortisol. Mm-hmm. And cortisol has a wide range of things that it does, but it's very much well known for stress. Mm-hmm. And you don't want this being produced later in the day. So you want to get it out the way early in the day, just like with the dopamine, because if it's later, then it's causing wear and tear on your body. You want to go to sleep. You want to be releasing growth hormone, but instead your body's flooded with cortisol. You're anxious.
Yep.
You can't go to sleep. Dopamine's being produced. So unless you want it to be produced at those times because you work a different shift or something, because we talk about that, people not liking third shift because it doesn't equate with the sun coming up and the sun going down, and our circadian rhythms, how they're naturally inclined towards our rhythm with these celestial bodies.
Yeah, but if you do work a third shift, then this would be something that would be very beneficial to you to take this into practice. Start to use these cycles and understand this rhythm and say, okay, yeah, when I come home from work, I need to do the best I can to make sure that when I wake up, there is some sunlight. If you're about to, if you're sleeping until, 5 and you got to be at work till it's 6:30 or whatever, then try to catch that sunlight try to catch some sunlight before you go to work. So that way you've got that release, right? Whatever you can do in order to make your life more efficient, in order to be spiritually selfish. And, when I say that, I don't mean in an egotistical manner. I mean in an altruistic manner, and in a manner that allows you to be the best person that you can be. Therefore, you're allowing people around you to be better versions of themselves. So that is what, you could grab onto something like rhythm and do a little research in our documents that we have attached down below and start to see that, hey, I can use these practices and it will help me live a healthier life, even though right now, I'm working a shift that I don't want to. I'm doing it because I have to. So
yeah, or you want to and you're just a night person.
Sure.
So it's like, you can gain some control over these rhythms and you can regulate them, and that's the point, is your rhythms determine your existence.
Yep.
So
just like the song, right?
Exactly. So it all boils down to, what are you rhythmically in tune with? Mm-hmm. What cycles are you in tune with? Because those are the things that, like repeating cycles, where let's say you're in a bad relationship and you get satisfaction out of being intimate with your partner after an argument. So now you feel the need, or at least instinctively or subconsciously, you feel the need to get into an argument so that you can have this intimate time, because this is how you've learned to communicate, because it's a rhythm.
Yep. Yeah.
Or getting in the rhythm of having bad things happen to you, whether it's constantly wrecking your car, or forgetting your keys and spilling your coffee, or forgetting to feed the dog, or leaving the door unlocked. These are rhythms.
Yep.
All of these things are rhythms. Macro rhythms, micro rhythms, they're all rhythmic.
Yeah. When you think about it, I would think about habits, at least on what Jordan is talking about in that sense. These are habits that you think that are just happening to you, but involuntarily, right? But they are voluntarily happening to you because of rhythm, because of a habit, because it's a habit-like nature, because habits are what make us into who we are. So these are the types of things that are happening throughout our day, every day, and then larger than day cycles of things happening, like possibly wrecking your car or whatever, and just figuring out how to transmute that, because as Jordan said, this is something that's happening, as we were just talking about with polarity, right? It's happening along two ends of a spectrum. So that's the rhythm, is back and forth across polarity, right? You've got this rhythm moving back and forth. So try to transmute that into one side. Try to, when something happens, lately I've been like, that's good, but it could be bad. What's the bad in it? Why do I have to celebrate this? Not because I'm a masochist or a sadist, but because when something bad happens, I am forcing myself to be like, what's the good in this? What could have happened? So it's more than just rhythm is something that you control. Here is how you control it. Here is how you control it. And that's by transmuting that energy that is, our consciousness is receiving. The data that we are receiving.
Yes. Yeah. So rhythm is life. We're getting that out. Rhythms can be transmuted because they can be polarized. And someone might ask, well, how do I polarize myself above a rhythm?
Sure.
And it's like, well, if you see that this is a rhythm, then do something different.
Yeah.
Like if you are losing your keys, then start hanging them up. Go to the store and get a little thing to hang on your fridge to put your keys on, or a string attached to your waist, and make sure you have them that mechanism attached to your pants for work, so that you don't leave your keys. It could be how you react to certain words.
Yes.
So someone might say a certain word, and when you hear this word out and about in life, or in your home or on TV, you might cringe or you might get upset, or because you've developed this rhythm of reacting to this specific thing. But now catch yourself. Yeah. Be attentive. Be aware and cognizant of what's going on, and that this produces a rhythm, because you're hearing the sound, you're seeing it, your senses are involved, and then you're reacting. But if you're conscious, you don't have to react in that same way. You don't actually have to react at all. No reaction is a reaction.
Yeah, if you're following along in the Kybalion, or you've already read it, they talk about how the masters were able to transmute this energy, that they are able to essentially escape the swing from the right to the swing to the left by transmuting it. They are able to perform and that's kind of what Jordan's talking about, but on a much more, it corresponds, equal in nature, different in degree. So something like getting a hook for your keys is teaching you how to start to transmute that energy on the same pole, right? And that polarity of, I know where my keys are or I don't. But you could also transmute that energy and start to hop to different poles with that energy. And that's what the masters learned how to do. And that's what we're hoping that, we learn how to do. That's what we're hoping that you learn how to do. That's what we're all learning these principles for, is to be able to be in a situation where we could either avoid something or receive something. And it's not because it's good or bad, but it's because we are consciously aware of that's what we want to happen. That's what we would prefer. So I'm going to transmute this and jump from here to here. And now this energy is going to affect me in this way. And we can do that with neurotransmitters. We can do that with activities. We can do that with a plethora of tools. We have a toolkit, and through our examples, we're trying to paint pictures of what this toolkit is and how you can start to understand how the body works and how life around you works and how the two interact. And then how that interaction is something that you can start to adjust. Right? That's the goal of all of this. And that's why we say that we love you. And that's why we say that this is something that we do for you, is because this is something that will be life-changing. The revelations that you're going to have from these principles, if you take it far enough, is going to be something where you're going to look back on this point in time and understand that, wow, this is where I became who I am. I don't remember who that guy or that girl is from before that point in time. It's all a dream. Ever since I started thinking about it, ever since I started applying these principles, I'm a different person. And that's the message that we're trying to share to you. This isn't you get beat down and you get back up. Right? It is, sure, but it's not. There I go again. I know that when I say that, I'm saying it generally. Obviously, there's going to be extreme situations and specifics, but that's not what this podcast is about. It is about grit, but it's also about changing your perspective and changing who you are, so that way you're not constantly getting beat down. And if you are, it's from a different perspective. You're receiving energy from a different place. And now it's time to learn how to overcome that and transmute that. And then you get past it and overcome that, and not just being beat down in the same place.
Yeah, because nothing is ever going to be stagnant. So people like to think that you're going to reach this pinnacle of perception and cultivation and maturity where, okay, now I don't have any more problems.
Right.
You might see a monk meditating, you're like, he doesn't have any problems. It's like life is always going to create new scenarios for this individual because it's about evolution.
Yep.
There is no pinnacle to evolution. The superposition is the pinnacle, which is infinite, which has no pinnacle.
Yeah.
So it's like, in a relative sense, as a fragmented being, you could never reach the summit of this mountain, even though you are all possible actions that can occur on the mountain. So it's paradoxical. It's like, by nature, you're energy, but you're always going to take on form. And then people say, well, what if I go to the spiritual plane? Well, let's say there is a spiritual plane. Not saying there's not, because I've personally been there.
Right.
I just don't have the data technologically to validate it. But from my experience, and from what I've studied and what I've seen in other people who have had similar experiences, there's still form there.
Yep, right.
And you're always going to take on a new form. Even if you reach the prototypic origin of this form, it's still a form in essence.
Yeah, I mean, think about how silly that is. Just think. If I am sitting here meditating and I'm trying to reach a point of stillness, and I'm trying to reach a point where, I'm not going up and down. You're trying to reach a point of non-existence. You're trying to reach a point that is unobtainable. Why would that be what you're shooting for? If you're a spiritualist and you're somebody who is in tune with yourself and you are trying to better yourself, think about that. It's about the resonant frequencies, like we talked about in vibration. It's about capturing something and locking onto it and maybe increasing the amplification then, not just randomly or whenever, increasing the amplification sporadically and increasing it, because if you did that, then you don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Because the existence is the rhythm.
Yes, it'd be equivalent to reaching absolute zero. And the thing is, it's not like these concepts don't have any weight and value to them, because the superposition is still from a theoretically infinite standpoint. So it's like, you are this energy, you are this superposition, so technically you're always still. It's like in Buddhism, you're always Buddha. You don't become Buddha, you become aware of being Buddha. Yes. And Buddha is just the eternal, the eternal presence of the absence of existence, which is the fullness of existence, because it's not actually absent. It's just absent of it's the absence of just one perspective, but a dual perspective as a singular perspective. So you have both still and motion. Buddha reached Buddhahood in a physical body, and when he did so, do you think he stopped vibrating? No, but he was in a place of stillness because he understood that the superposition was still and he was the superposition. So technically he was in a state of stillness.
That's a great point.
But he was still vibrating.
Don't forget. Yep, go ahead.
Just real quick. So a lot of people, like he was saying, they have these misnomers about how this works, because normally we have a dualistic perception and we want to choose one over the other. We want to say, well, I want to be still. Well, if you're in motion, you can't be still. The only way that you could, well, my master said I could. Well, the only way that your master could be correct is if your master was referring to an absolute sense. And in an absolute sense will absolutely be relative, no matter how absolutely apparent our essential reality is.
Yeah. And that's because it's relative, right? When I'm moving in a vehicle, I think that everything is moving past me. So I'm still, and everything's moving past me. But to the person outside of the vehicle that I'm looking at, they're standing still, and that individual is moving. So that's that paradox. That's that dualistic nature. That's why you can't escape these principles. That's why you can't escape this idea of, oh, well, it's stillness, and I just want to be still. Being still is recognizing that you are the superposition and you are the particle. Being still is understanding that you are God or energy and that you are matter. Being still is understanding the yin and the yang. Being still is understanding polarity, understanding vibration, understanding mentalism, understanding rhythm, understanding gender, understanding all of these principles. That is when you start to feel the stillness, but still recognizing that you're not still now, you're still moving, but you realize that you've always been attached to the stillness.
Yes.
Just like Buddha realized that he was always Buddha.
Exactly. And let's go back to something in the beginning where we talked about music. And we've talked about, sounds are just vibrations. So music, we've classified music as good or bad or this genre or this genre, but really it's just vibratory sounds oscillating in our environment, and we're picking it up. And the ancients, they were saying that the celestial spheres were like a symphony, like an orchestra, like everything in the entire universe was in harmony, was in tune, and it was a song. So life was a part of this song, and that's why music is so influential, because of rhythm.
Yeah, even as like you see my daughter, who's not even 2 years old, when she was 6 months old and a song would come on and she would start to bump. It's something that is very intrinsic to us as human beings because of the power of it. If it's powerful or it's something that has a huge part in our lives, it's going to be, or in the human race, then it's something that's going to affect us without us having to adapt to it, without us having to use our brain to say, yes, this is something that's powerful. And rhythm is one of those things because of those examples that you just mentioned. And we can see it all the way down to, we could see it in, if we want to talk about animals and plants and minerals, we can see the vibration and how music affects those things as well. And we can also see it from the age of the polarity of child to elder, right? We can see it all the way through those poles.
Exactly, yep. Birth, growth, maturity, old age, death. So everything, like you said, has a cycle. Everything in all the way down to the quarks have a cycle. So we can't escape it in any way possible. That is the point we're trying to paint to you, is every one of these principles are a singular principle, and every particle and atom and molecule of existence is subject to these principles, and not just subject to it, but it is intimately one with it. So you can't have existence without principle. Principle is existence. Everything is comprised of it. And when I say comprised, I don't mean that there's two things you put together to make one. It's one thing that is expressed as an infinitude of parts.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that hopefully, because we've went through so many of these principles by now, and we just covered polarity, you'll start to understand what that means. And you'll start to use all of these principles, and the fact that we're showing you that there is no escaping them. It's not like, we told you and that's why you're watching. It's like, no, this is the reality. And because this is the reality, these are the keys. These are the keys to your reality. Take them or leave them. They're going to be there. It's still going to be the fundamental nature of your reality. So do you want to take those keys and start to weave yourself in your reality, or do you just want reality to happen? If you just want reality to happen, we appreciate you watching, but that's not what this is for. This is for the individuals that are ready to start having some ownership and start being accountable for their reality. And they want to start to understand how, because there's so much misinformation out here, right? In closing thoughts, that is what I am fearful of for you and for myself, is the misinformation. And because I was able to grab onto this information when I was in a place where there was misinformation, but I didn't have access to an insane amount of information like there is nowadays. It's so much harder to find it. It's so much harder to find the truth. In the age of information, where all information is out there, if you haven't heard of the Kybalion before now, then you know why. Because it's hard to find these things. So please use these principles. Understand that rhythm is life. Rhythm is the motion of life. And do you want to dance with life? Like, hey, pretty lady, I see you over there. Or do you want your life to be more like hard rock, and it's just like, and it's just beating you down, and you're like, I just want Mozart symphony right now.
Yeah, because certain frequencies are like better for brain growth and maturity and stability and neuroplasticity, neurogenesis, etc. So so life is music, and it's like, do you want, and that was a good point you made, do you want to move with life, or do you want to be moved by life? So, and that's kind of like you using the example of Mozart versus some heavy metal that has a frequency that is not good for cellular growth.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, look at this cell under a microscope when you're playing rock music in close proximity versus playing some type of classical music. And, it's all about hertz and it's all about vibrations. It's all about frequency. It's all about rhythm. So these different patterns impact biology differently even. You can even look at how people react to different types of music and just think of the rhythm.
Yep.
Are people going around killing each other to love songs?
Right.
Right. You know what I mean? Like, no, it's probably something with a different harmony, a different frequency, a different vibration, a different rhythm to it. So, let's be in tune with the principles. Let's understand that they pertain to everything. They were in every ancient system, and they were on the lips of all the ancient masters. And whether we're aware of it or not, these principles are present. And for finishing thoughts, let's say you're religious and you subscribe to, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and God was the Word. Okay, so we're talking about rhythm. Yeah,
you can't get away from it, right? It's like, yep, that is true. There is some truth there to that. And we're going to get into cause and effect next, which, and the chapters of the Kybalion, we're just going in the order of them, but cause and effect is one that probably should, in my mind, it should come a little sooner, but what do I know? I do think that cause and effect is something that hopefully you've heard of before. It's, the fundamental basis of physics, and it's the probably most well-known idea is cause and effect. It's just, it's everywhere. So that's where we'll be next. And then after that is gender. And then we'll be through the Kybalion, and we might have a couple more episodes just to kind of talk about it. Let us know in the comments down below after we're done with the Kybalion what you would like to hear us speak on. We have some ideas, but obviously we want to hear from the community as to what you would like us to talk about next. Outside of that, do you have anything else?
Rhythmically move your finger.
I was going to say that.
To that subscribe, like, and share button.
I was like, is he going to? That's exactly what I was going to say, too. Rhythmically move that hand.
Yeah, just wave it on down there and hit that button.
All right, we love you. Peace.
Yeah. Don't talk to me, it's off to me. Assault police, the archer screeds. My carpentry is carpeting for all of these false MCs. I chalk the scene, I'm Charlie Sheen. I darken dreams, the carpet bleeds. My pauper leaves a scar in your whole face like a Carter scene. I go hard cause the car to me. You ain't hard as he, or the yard hate. Bar hate, it's the Nazarene. Choking line with a main, I'm a martyr king. Yeah, I'm a god, so it's all with me. Pull at your heart, I'm chewing at your arteries. Damn, for the artistry, the artist bleeds. I'm martyring your darling. It's all with me, get lost at sea. Shout the priest, stomp the beast. I do not play, it's often seen. I'm off the boat, got a play to me, homie, I'm off the go. I don't know, but you niggas put them off the dose or off the smoke, a cough, a choke, a puke up a coffin toe with a whole body in it like a mafia joke. Off the coast like mafios. My posse grows like poppy fields. Got a Glock on my side, but it's not the quote. I got the tree, I got the rope, I got the crown, I got the throne. I'm not the Pope, I am the Lord. Goddamn your soul, the gamut grows, the ganja pose, a cannon show. Loud, I'm a blast like my hand and drone. I control the whole globe with a Thanos glove. Jewels on my wrist from the planet dust. You're messing with a god like I am the code. I am the code, the camera froze, they cannot cope. They plan to post, but I'ma kill them all. With the plan I wrote, the antidote, the man I spoke. I gave him life, but I'ma end them all. I'ma ram and close the brand and palm volcanic rhymes. The man I lie, the fans are spawns. I chant the rhyme, my clan's a god. You cannot stop the Metatron, the messenger. The Messiah, the master of the last of dawns, the mastodon, the razor-tooth dragon that'll blast your pawns and make your king disappear with a magic wand. Be gone. The path them on, get a rapping gauze and rip by claws and smash your skull. Your pass baton, the gap is large. I'm way too far, I'm past the stars. Galactic bars, the acid pause. I rap in fours and tundra sword. The guns on board, Wakanda Lord, the jungle boy. You come some more, come for war. And I made the mongrels mourn. I'm hungry for the lungs of yours. Your tongue's in cold, my stomach roars. I munch on gourds, running force, the hunter's board. Hunt for sport, slap a pole and punch a horse.